executed in the real world, it was being fabricated by a couple of like burly dudes with a chainsaw.
It was a logo.
Out of a giant piece of plywood, right? And they weren't exactly following the radius.
Less than enlightened aesthetically.
And I thought, that's like a really profound idea. Like, the most finely wrought designs
Yeah, can turn into
have to stand the chainsaw test.
Actually, it was a jigsaw.
yeah.
My bad.
See, my
Clearly, I
takeaway
don't
from
know.
that story
Slightly
is not,
more subtle.
Yeah, I mean, one could conclude, well, don't sweat the details because in the real world it's all kind of, and that's not what I take away. The reason for going through the 30 iterations without getting it right is because you want it right.
Right.
And it will always be perfect.
If you make it right enough, it will still look good with a hand, cut out of a handsaw.
Right.
If you just do it mediocrely, that's what it will look like crap cut out of a chainsaw.
It's interesting, there's a term in engineering, we talk about tolerances, right? This beam is supposed to be 3.725 inches long or whatever.
Plus or minus
Some
0.02.
tolerance.
Right.
But that notion of tolerance, and it's really designing the rule, like there's a lozenge that is more tolerant, that will,
Yeah.
despite the real world application of chainsaws or
But what's
jigsaws or
interesting
whatever.
in art and design, where things live almost abstractly, or one might even say subjectively, the idea of a value of tolerance in an abstract idea or an abstract concept becomes very interesting and really not measurable. And this is where one might say things like intuition, imagination, and kind of a certain skill set that can't be learned really becomes more valued than any type of measurable dictum or measurable and quantifiable skill set that would say, look, this logo doesn't look good because of the radius of this particular line to this particular line. There's a certain looseness in the creative field that should be talked about with the idea of tolerance in mind, but it never is.
Now, when you say tolerance in the creative field, I mean, this is all kind of like a little bit like Swedish language to me, which I know nothing about. Tolerance in engineering, that sounds interesting. Don't you have the freedom in sort of design that's not going to be made into a metal object or to do anything you want? Isn't that just part of it, that intuition? I mean, how does that relate to what he's talking about in tolerance in terms of engineering?
Well, you talked about it today in Beauty around music. You could listen to 0.4 seconds of a song and know immediately if the quality was above a certain level. And so that's the tolerance.
I mean, the same thing
In the visual.
in design. I would say, look, I don't know how you do it right, but I can sure as hell say, this is wrong. There's an infinite world to play on the table, but once it's off,
Which
it's
is,
just out, and I can't.
and this comes back to the story of Jobs, Steve Jobs. That was the groundwork that he was testing. I'm not sure he knew what an 11 or a 12 was that he was looking for.
He just wasn't feeling it.
Right, yeah. And wouldn't accept anything less.
Was he able to articulate what he felt to make it easier on those designers?
Sometimes, many times, not always.
They got to put their names on the inside of the computer. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's true.
yeah, the first Macintosh. I had, at the time, there were 5 Betamax, the original 1984 toaster hard drive Macs. And I got one of 5 Betamax. And at the time, Apple used to give us all sorts of free computers, so I had a little museum of computers in my house, and my wife just got so upset with me, she said, get rid of them all! And I did.
Of course you did.
Yeah, of course,
Right,
right?
that's,
Can you imagine?
There would be a Saudi prince that would pay $1 for that.
Good thing you're venture capital. Obviously not a very good one.
great.
Alright, very good, Phil.
Very good to you.
Thank you. Well done.
Yeah. Here, here.
Who's next?